Welcome to part 2 of the flying episode on Guadalcanal, the bonus episode of Let's Play Battlefield 1942. The village flag is in contention again, so obviously that's going to be a prime target for everyone, myself included. Speaking to the planes generally now, you've probably noticed, and I certainly have, that I haven't had to deal with too much in the way of hostile aircraft on this map so far. Partly that's because me and some of the other planes have been just relentlessly bombing the hostile airstrip to keep people out of their planes, to keep plane campers discouraged from even bothering the plane camp, and more importantly probably to deter the best pilots, the most impatient pilots, from bothering to do the plane camping game. So we're keeping their planes out of the air by keeping them on the ground or destroyed, which is the best way by far. Although now we're seeing a lot of plane campers, and they're manning the flak guns now, so we've got to be really careful. Now when you don't have to deal with hostile aircraft, there's one other challenge that the pilot normally has. I'm actually out of bullets, so I wasn't even able to shoot at that nice target while he's going to be in the air. I'm going to have to go all the way back to the friendly landing strip to refill my bullets. Yeah, they're definitely manning the flak guns now. The main challenge of the airplane is to be relevant, to have a big enough impact on the battlefield to make it worthwhile, to score enough kills, to damage enough enemy vehicles, and just to make a big enough nuisance of yourself, because you cannot capture flags as an airplane. And on Battlefield 1942, the name of the game is almost always controlling control points, capturing flags. And since you can't do that, you'll have to make up for it by destroying enemy assets, that is vehicles. And that was nice, we got some empty planes on the landing strip. Now, if I were being really a team player, I would have kept up with my damaged, captured Corsair simply to deny the enemy the use of that plane and give our side an extra plane. But on the other hand, I might just get shot down by a hostile flak gun, and then I've got to do the old plane camper problem of sitting around waiting for a plane. So in the interest of the LP and my own entertainment, I'm going to switch out the planes and, well, do what I did. But anyway, the plane, you've got to to make effective use of the plane, your main challenge is going to be just racking up the kills and destroying stuff. Now that's easier said than done sometimes. You've got to be able to find the enemy, and that's why the radar hack became so attractive to so many hackers, was the pilots could see where all the enemy were, they could stay way up in the clouds and stay out of sight, and then dive bomb when need be. And of course, as I've mentioned, and as you've probably seen, it's not always easy to do a good bombing run against a tank, especially in a fighter where you've got to be dead on, because you've only got one bomb to drop at a time. And also, you typically don't think of airplanes as killing infantry that much on this game. If you're an infantry, your main worry is usually going to be tanks or maybe other infantry. You don't worry about getting shot up with machine guns at tanks, although on a landing strip you certainly do. So even on Guadalcanal, if I weren't concentrating so much on the hostile landing strip, it would be a lot more difficult to find all these targets. And even though the Americans have 3 flags, they're still spawning and spawning and spawning in the airstrip. You know, plane pilots who aren't that good can fly around for minutes and minutes at a time and just not get that many kills, if any. So even though they're staying alive and they're not dealing with hostile aircraft, maybe they just waste their time, and that's why I think it's a decent, mean strategy. If you see really bad pilots in the air on the enemy's team, you may want to think about not attacking them in the hopes that they won't die, and then wait for a plane, and then somebody who's a better pilot takes the plane. And that's another reason why you often see people in the chat complaining about the quality of their pilots. That's the main thing, is getting pilots who are good enough to really rack up the kills with them, because it's easy to just be, you know, flying around and not getting them. Right, that flat gun is manned, and this airplane is just about dead. I didn't say anything there just so you could enjoy the sound of the crackling fire around the fuselage. And I think the landing gear started to go down. That was that little grinding noise. Alright, so now I'm dealing with the plane camper's dilemma of getting a plane. Now, the way you want to plane camp is to try to remember as best you can the exact spot where your plane spawned in. And stick nearby. You can hold down E to enter the plane automatically if you know where it is. And I'm hoping that the admin, moron number 8, is talking about the other guy, because next plane, that was the plane that the other guy took. I took the next plane after the next plane. It's funny, normally you have to worry about plane campers shooting you as revenge when you fly off in a plane because they're so frustrated. And in that case, you have to worry about an admin enforcing, quote, his rights to the next plane. And my advice, by the way, is to never ever actually let somebody else, because you're waiting in line, never let somebody else get a plane. And the reason for that is very simple, because no one else will do that for you. There's no give and take, because you're going to be going on different servers and dealing with different people, so there's really no point. There's nothing you can get in return other than the frustration of waiting for a plane. Most bitter people who plane camp are the ones who let someone else take the plane because it's their turn, and then when it's their turn, not surprisingly, what happens is someone else just runs for the plane and grabs it. In fact, there are servers that have actual rules, and they will kick you out for this, where if you take a Jeep, you spawn in at a base, you take a Jeep and drive over to the planes, even if it's at a great distance and you're saving time, you take the Jeep, drive over, get out of the Jeep, and take a plane. They will kick you out for that because you're, quote, taxiing, as if the Jeep is not meant to be like a taxi to transport you. And the theory behind that, I suppose, is that when you spawn in, that's your place in line, is your distance from the plane. You've got to walk all the way over there. People get frustrated when they spawn in, they start walking toward a plane, someone else spawns in later, and then they take a Jeep over to the plane and take it. I've actually gotten kicked out of a server for taking a Jeep on the Wake Airfield. I spawned over near the tank spawn, took the Jeep, drove it over to the airplane so no one else was there, and then I got kicked out. I've noticed that a lot of my kills so far have been on hostile infantry just walking around in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of weird, but in a way it's easier because you can aim the guns, you know, just using your crosshairs, whereas the bombs, it's really kind of tricky to aim them, and then of course vehicles like tanks, you got to be dead on. But on this map in particular, if you can rack up kills on the infantry, man, it really looks like I'm doing surgery here, just taking out enemies at that village while there's so many friendlies over there. Yeah, I had actually seen that guy in the hill earlier on, that's why. That would be a candidate for complaining about the radar hack if he was out in the middle of nowhere and a plane came along and strafed him. This map is a very slow-moving type of map. It takes a while to get from control point to control point. The kills and point numbers on each side tend to be quite low. So if you're an airplane, you can shoot up a bunch of infantry and rack up a bunch of kills. That can be very useful in kind of speeding up the action and knocking down the enemy tickets. And particularly if they're in transit to another point, right? I just spotted an American landing craft. So after this run, I'm going to go over there and see if I can sink it before it either lands or the Americans run out of tickets. Landing craft, or if they're in the water, they're very easy to sink. Right, there it is. And unfortunately, the guys got out, so I wasn't able to get the second guy. I didn't even realize there's another person in there. If you sink it while it's in the water, both people die instantly. unless they're just sitting in the landing craft and not. Oh, there's another 2 soldiers. And that'll do it for this episode of Let's Play Battlefield 1942.